Welcome to Educate Us, a podcast and learning collective that explores the questions shaping education. Through conversations with educators, researchers, scholars, students, and community members, we examine the relationship between learning and lived experience. Together, we explore new possibilities for education and its role in the world around us. I am Dr. Tiffany Smith, educator, curriculum designer, researcher, founder, and host of Educate Us. Thank you for joining. Let's begin. Before we begin today's conversation, I'd like to pause just for a moment. Over the past 2 episodes, we've explored curriculum through the perspectives of educators. Those conversations have helped establish many of the ideas informing the multimodal curriculum I'm developing for high school students. But if we're serious about designing curriculum around the world students actually inhabit, educators can't be the only voices shaping the conversation. Communities teach, neighborhoods teach, organizations teach. Throughout the remainder of this season, we'll move between conversations with educators and community partners, exploring how each contributes to the design of meaningful learning experiences. Together, these perspectives help us imagine curriculum that extends beyond school walls and into the communities where students already live, work, and belong. Today's guest is community leader Sidney McGhee, director of Damned Good People, right here in St. Louis, Missouri. His work challenges us to think differently about the relationship between schools, neighborhoods, and community. You'll also hear a brief conversation with Kim Lomax, owner of Coffee Co., as she shares the vision behind one of the community spaces featured throughout today's discussion. Let's begin. Today's episode is titled Designing Curriculum Around Community. And we are joined by Sidney McGhee from Damned Good People right here in St. Louis, Missouri. Sidney McGhee performing as Frida Poet.
Yeah.
Frida Poet is a powerhouse spoken word artist whose work bridges the gap between raw education and spiritual liberation. Though shaped by the DMV area, Sidney's heart and history are rooted in St. Louis, where they were born, raised, and educated. As a dedicated community leader, Sidney founded DFT Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. That's what DFT stands for. So DFT Breathe, providing essential free healing services for all identifying men of color. Okay. Furthering this mission of equity, Sidney serves as the director of Damn Good People, a nonprofit located in the Grove, whether advocating for marginalized groups' rights or commanding a stage. Sidney's mission is singular. And for all those people out there, singular means one thing, okay? Just one thing, all right? To educate, to heal, and to ensure you feel as free as the good green earth that just sprouts up from the ground.
Yes,
Sidney,
yes.
thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you
I
for
love that introduction.
Thank you for such a dynamic. You made it so dynamic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we don't want to just listen. I tell my students all the time, words have power. I even did a demonstration once in class where I talked about the vibration of air. So if you blow air there's a force behind what you just pushed out of your body. It goes out into the world. And what happens then? Who knows? But we want it to be good, right?
Yeah, it gets transferred and transmuted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even when we're not in the physical presence of the person that sent the thought. Hmm. All right, let's not digress. So, one of the things we've been exploring throughout this series is the idea that physical spaces themselves communicate meaning. And before I get your answer on this, let me tell our listeners. So, um, there's a possibility that the curriculum that we're building could be piloted at the space Damn Good People. And so I want to actually, before we even get into some of this community kind of thing, um, Sidney, tell us about the space. Um, help our listeners to understand, like, what is this space that you've cultivated in the Grove? I know I've been there a few times already, but they
For,
don't they
for
don't
sure.
know.
We we are a nonprofit organization. Let's start there. And our mission at Damn Good People is to educate the public of the dangers of a theological society, having a theological government. For
Mm-hmm.
ones who maybe not know what that means, to pick it up in what layman terms is, democracy works better when we don't have one religion setting the rules for everybody.
Mm,
So we're not anti-religious, we're anti-theocracy. That's what theocracy is.
mm-hmm.
Now our space, we use our coffee partners, which is Coffee Co. That is in our space. We use that coffee shop as an anchor to the community to give them something to come in and sit down and have a conversation over over coffee, over the love of
Mm-hmm.
coffee, to be able to bridge a community because everybody says you on the Grove is such a good location because they understand the idea of what the Grove is. But we've been only holding on to just the idea of the Grove. You can still feel the division. You can still feel that it's not fully inclusive, from the
Mm-hmm.
bars playing, they don't want to play this certain type of music. They don't want to, serve this type of alcohol because they don't want to bring this certain crowd, you know,
Mm, mm,
uh,
mm, mm,
which
mm,
is
mm,
not inclusive. So this space is what I would like to believe and pursue is to make sure that this is a third space for you that is inclusive, that
mm-hmm,
allows you to feel seen. It's a home for the authentic, for you to be able to be your true self, to have resources so you don't have to go within your own community to find those resources, to find like-minded people. You can find it here.
mm-hmm,
That's the space that I'm building here on the
mm-hmm,
Grove.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I would say that the decor of the space lends itself to that same inclusivity. I mean, even with the whole front of the building can be opened like a
Yes.
garage. So you're inside, but you're outside at the same time. And then when you come in, you have these remnants of outside with the greenery and the light golden wood fixtures at
Hmm.
the top. It all of that is tree,
It's
wood,
yeah, intentional.
nature,
Yeah, it was
you
intention. It was
know.
it was intentional when we bought this building. It already had that garage door, and we had to get it serviced because we wanted to work it. We wanted it to be part of that space.
Mm-hmm.
People like a good patio, especially St.
Mm-hmm.
Louis. Good coffee and good patio. We got it both. But
Mm-hmm.
no, we were
Good
intentional.
refreshers too, but shout
Oh
out to
yeah,
Coffee Co.
refreshers.
Shout out to Coffee
Yeah,
Co.
yeah, refreshers, smoothies, all that. No, but yeah, it was when I picked the color stain, I was very intentional,
Mm-hmm.
of making it feel warm.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go upstairs to where
Oh,
then the
see,
people dominate, it's a whole nother vibe. It's you forget where
completely
you are.
different vibe. You do.
I want
You
you
do.
to. I
The
want you to.
exposed brick, the
Yes.
stage, like
The bookshelf, the couch, I wanted you to feel you had a real third space. This is my space away from
there
home.
there is so much potential for learning in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable, especially when you come in on the first floor and you get hit with that vibe at the door.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's
And
gonna feel
so
like it.
the first floor becomes that social space, right? So when we think about our education and we think about real world spaces, how do we transfer what we learn, how we learn, so that when we walk into spaces like this, we can be and embody the inclusivity that you're suggesting of not just that space, but the world in general.
See, I think that I mean, whether we wanna admit it or not, we've already been trained. And
Mm-hmm.
especially in the black community, we've already been trained.
Mm-hmm.
So when you walk into this space intentionally, because Coffee Co is his own partner, but I wanted us to be aligned on things that everybody feels what you just described when they walk in. It's
Mm-hmm.
intentional. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, because especially in our community, I can only speak for ours because I live it, we are always adapting, whether it's in survival mode or whatever. I wanted this space to be where you didn't have to cut on anything. You could actually
Yes.
be yourself. You can come in and feel
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, she's treating me like I've been here. I'm their regular customer.
Yep.
Absolutely. We want you
From
to,
day one.
from day one. Not because we want you to be, of course we do, because we want to be profitable, but we want you to feel that you belong here and you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
try. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
convince us. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to spend. You don't have to tip big for us to know your name. No, everybody is on the
Mm-hmm.
same level. Finally, a good seat at the. I put you at a
Mm-hmm.
good seat at the table. Everybody get to sit at the head.
I love that. And it's funny because I had already established my relationship with Coffee Co. before the Grove opened. So I already knew Kim, already knew Kanisha. And then
Hmm.
with Kanisha running
Yeah.
majority of her time Coffee Co., I already come in like, what's up, Kay?
Hmm.
But I literally met her in a same type of space where it's inclusive, where you feel
Yes.
like you can be
Well,
yourself.
see, it was very easy to transition them over because that's what I felt when I first went in there and didn't know any of them. I was
Mm-hmm.
just trying to get a coffee shop to move into our space. Um, but the Grove, because I want to specify Coffee Co. The Grove, its official name now, is more. I'm trying to
Okay.
build more than just a coffee shop, and that's where I'm getting Kim on board with me. Grooming it a little bit to let her see that whatever you thought this was going to be, I'm going to make it more than what you imagine because I see it. I want this to be a community hub. We talk about the drip; they 12 minutes away. And their community hub. We need that because back then, I mean, we just got to deal with the numbers. I looked at the numbers at Ethical Society, how many people have left the church. And when
Mm.
we talk about
Mm.
Mill Creek, and we
Whoa,
talk about the
whoa.
the
That's a
40,
big shift.
well, wait a minute.
Okay, let's
Wait,
go
wait.
there.
I'm gonna bring it home. I'm gonna bring it home.
Woo!
When we talk about like
It's
Mill
heavy.
Creek and we talk about the 42 churches, those churches weren't just used as praise and worship, they were used as a community hub to gather, organize, and be
Mm-hmm.
aware. So we have to meet people where they at. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can't
Mm-hmm.
force you to go back to church. Then we need to make sure that these spaces are a community hub for us to be
Mm-hmm.
able to educate, be aware of what's happening, and to
Mm-hmm.
organize and be on
Yep.
the same page as a community.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee Co.
And be clear when we say, and I'm including myself in this now, when we say community,
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about at its most basic, most principal level of humanity. So not community if you're this, or community if you're
Right.
that, or
Mm-hmm.
community if you were born here, or community if you identify. No, community means everybody. Am I right about that?
I agree. I
Can,
mean, we
what?
won't get into the to semantics of it, but yeah, I would agree. Or the people who are commonly affected the most, we can say that when we talk about just the neighborhoods, being a community. We
Mm-hmm.
vote here. We live here. We go to elections here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We know our alderman here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that it is its own entity in community. We struggle. We have the same struggles here that we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to get through. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I imagine the most as when we say community. That's why I try
Mm-hmm.
and keep things relevant to this location because I
Mm-hmm.
understand what's around me. It's community, the people that
Mm-hmm.
commute through here, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so working here, uh, that's what I consider also to be, a community.
Mm-hmm. 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 So that's a good segue. That's a good segue. Because, as I've been preaching, this curriculum is really focused on putting students in real world settings to employ the skills that are being reinforced in the academic setting, right?
Mhm.
So that learning becomes more transferable. So, one of the ideas we've been exploring through this series is the idea that physical spaces themselves communicate meaning.
Mhm.
From your perspective, what makes community spaces powerful sites for learning?
I think that again, it deals with if you're making that space, like let's say with damn good people. When I say in the beginning I was intentional, yes, because I already knew what I wanted this to be. You have to lay out a foundation first. I can't just go buy something and then say, "Hey, everybody gonna learn up in here." You know, you want it to feel inviting. You want it to be inviting. You want people to be able to. I think to be able to truly learn is you have to be truly vulnerable, and that is hard to do. To admit, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know this, I don't know that, you know, that's a sign. People take it as a sign of weakness of to not know nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you have to accommodate that. How can I
Mm-hmm.
automatically kind of take off that shield for you when I make this space? I think that
Mm-hmm.
that is the foundation I'm referring to. Is where you have to start before you can just make a space a learning hub. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the people you bring in. What you
I
gonna
was
say?
just I was just about to go there. Yeah, speak to how you've already done that. I mean, just this past week, this past weekend. And actually, I know for a fact that you had two different events. So you had the one that I attended on Saturday, but then you had another one on Sunday, correct? Where
I
people were
had
hosted.
Yeah, so I had okay, so Saturday was coffee talks.
Coffee
And we
talk.
had Angel Font Flores Fontanez from PSL Public Socialism of Liberation. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I was amazed with, by the way, for a
Me
man to
too.
for a man to come from Puerto Rico and learn Black history because he knows Black history is everybody's history. And
I was so engaged in that conversation that I absolutely do not see St. Louis the same.
and that's what I wanted because and then Vivian came real good in to tie it all together. But here's
and
the
to
thing.
give us that granular lens. So while he was talking about the larger
Mm-hmm.
systemic
Mm-hmm.
problem with
Mm-hmm.
displacing poor Black and brown people in St. Louis,
Yes.
she was able to come in and say, okay, let me show you exactly what was happening in our lives as we were being displaced. So I mean, speak to,
Yeah,
how your space just, I mean, we're not talking about coffee anymore.
no,
Like,
we're not. We upstairs, literally. Uh, you know,
yes, higher learning.
yes. we, well, here's yes, Angel did very well. He started from the beginning. He did. He said, let's start from the very beginning. And he did good taking it home. Because in the middle of it, I was like, okay, bring it home, bring it home. And I'm hearing it. And I wanted to ask Vivian, what was the early signs and that she saw in Mill Creek? But after listening to Angel, we passed that.
Mm-hmm.
They are already here, and that just made me so
Mm-hmm.
kind of scared. Like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
it's been happening in front of our eyes. And Vivian confirmed this at 10 years now. From now, you
Mm-hmm.
North City would be something different, and our memories would be short about what it used to be.
Yep.
But finding them, let me tell you this though, because like I said, I'm a strong believer that when you are intentional about what you do, you are then moving into alignment. Because when I was intentional and I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I told you, you were the first person that heard it. You heard it live. I said, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do this. I did. I then the couple next days I ran into Douglas, who came and walked into my coffee shop, and I told him what I needed. Kim wasn't really paying him no mind, but something just said, "Let me talk to this man." And I did. And I said, Douglas, I need this. I need somebody who's boots on the ground who could tell me whatever it is. He said, well, I got somebody for you. I didn't know he was gonna bring him back the next day. He did, and he brought Angel, and I didn't even know that man from a can of paint. And as I started
Mm-hmm.
researching him, I said, I hit a gold mine.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying. You have to be intentional. You have to know the mission.
Mm-hmm.
When you wake up in the morning, you say, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get there? That's the first question you say. What am I doing today? And how am I gonna get there?
Mm-hmm.
Set it out. Set the intentions because we could
I
talk
love
about
that.
the we could talk about schoolhouse and how you've been learning there. But I tell people all the time, I take my time with my degrees. I do. Because I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be so closed off to what's happening because life is a classroom too now.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And I've compared myself to my friends who after they graduated from high school, they went straight to college and they did everything right, whatever. Me, I did
Mm-hmm.
not. I graduated high school, didn't go straight to college. I
Mm-hmm.
started working. I just started
Mm-hmm.
working because I said I can't be in my mama house and not having no money. So I
Mm-hmm.
did. I did. I started working, and that gave me some experience. I said, "Whoa, I don't know what I was learning in school, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't this."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and I remember teachers would be so frustrated in math class when we say, when are we gonna ever use this? They used to be
Mm-hmm.
so frustrated with us, but I still ask that same question because I'm
Mm-hmm.
still not using it. But with the
Well,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want to
okay.
interrupt.
What I was gonna say is that we don't need to not take away math, but instead of finding what y equals, maybe we incorporate it with how we maybe with financial literacy. We talked about literacy in the beginning of how we use it in today. You know.
Well, I mean, the unknown
Mm-hmm.
is what we constantly process,
Yeah.
right? Even as you plan your day. So when you wake up in the morning, you say, okay, these are my intentions for the day, which I agree with. I wholeheartedly agree with, right? But there's still an element of the unknown. And
Mm-hmm.
so what math gets you processing the unknown and the ways in which not only are you adding and subtracting numbers, but you're adding and subtracting situations and determining what's going to be positive, what could potentially be negative. How do I, and if I do this positive thing and this negative thing, then will I get a positive result or will I get a negative? Like, and ultimately, any answer that we derive is bringing us to the unknown, which is X, right? So it's not, and also one of the things about K through 12 is that K through 12 is about cognitive development. That
Mm-hmm.
means the development of your brain. is what's happening. So, and it's happening through these exercises and these lessons and these assessments and different things that are requiring cognition or the use of intellect or your brain to process. Anytime you say process, we're talking about brain work. And so that's what K through 12 is meant to do. But the transfer, especially in cases where students don't have high levels of intellect or aren't being trained consistently to tap into that situation, because the brain, that like the anything material, is being trained, right? And so, you know, for students in what we consider impoverished areas that don't have that level of intellect and aren't having those kind of advanced cognitive, they don't know about synthesizing ideas. They're not, you know, they're not moving up Bloom's taxonomy to creation and, you know, construction of different things, you know, like they're not doing that. They're low level. They're doing recall. Do I understand? You know, they're not expanding, you know, they're not analyzing spaces, God forbid, but they have the ability to do it, and they do it all the time without really knowing it. But anyway, there's definitely transfer. So your space, just getting back to this whole, you know, powerful site for learning, your space is intensely a learning space. So if we take this same concept that we have about, you know, transfer of experience from academic to what can students learn from your space that they may not fully experience in that traditional classroom space. So if we flip it and say your space becomes the classroom.
So here's the thing. When we talk about it depends on where you want to be. You want to be downstairs, then you get to learn how to run a coffee shop and what does it take to really run it. You want to be an entrepreneur? Well, we gonna show you what it really takes. Because I can pull up right on that system and say, look, this is our sales, and this is how much it costs to keep the people here, to the labor costs it takes for people to sit there and greet you in here and make your drinks, correct? Now you tell me, did we make enough this week to be able to pay them? Where do we pull the money to pay them when we don't make it? These are real. I want you to, you know, because I don't want to feed. I feel like, in my opinion, school trains you to be an employee. I don't want to feed into that. I want to feed and tell you the real life of what it takes to really run a business successfully. You know, I told a guy the other day. He came. He said, I don't know. Last year I was making $14 an hour, and I don't even know how I was even making it, but I made it happen. He said, I can't wait to open up a restaurant. In the back of my head, I said, Lord have mercy. I don't ever really recommend restaurants, but I'm not going to, that's your dream. I'm gonna tell you what it is. You working at $14 an hour and you sitting there trying to figure out how to make it is your stepping stone to when you becoming open up that restaurant, because that first 3 to 6 months, you don't know how you gonna make it. You know?
Yeah, that
And,
part.
but if I prepare you for these things, it's not being pessimistic, but if I prepare you better to what could happen, what will happen, you do not have to struggle the same way that I did.
So that's sounding like history.
Yes.
If we're embedding historical, we could do St. Louis history in terms of the development of businesses, starting with the businesses that were cultivated on the landing, all the way to some of the skyscrapers that we have downtown. That could turn into interviews and conversations with current CEOs about what it means to run a business, how to make business decisions, so on and so forth. And there's actually some math in there too.
I'm not a mathematician, but here's the thing. Everybody, most people would sit in the chair that I'm sitting in, which is why I'm saying you got people learning how to solve for X and Y, X and B or whatever, and you can't even stand at the cash register and count the change back before the machine tell you
Well,
something is
that's
not
an
right.
X. The
Something is not
customer,
right there.
the customer gave you $10.
Right, but
How
that's what I'm
much
saying though.
money?
But that's what I'm saying. If you're not good, if we that's where most of the we should have laid down better before we just kept pushing you more and newer math. Was to make sure you knew the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And because if you don't grasp that, how can you survive for the next 3 months of where the money is coming from and manage that?
Well, there's also the issue of whether learning the fundamentals in isolation will guarantee transfer. So if I'm learning fractions in isolation, but I walk into a grocery store and I don't know how much 2 for $5, you understand? Like, still on that math tip.
See, what when you say isolation, what do you mean?
I mean, in the classroom, teachers at the board,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
1/1 is this, 2/2
mm-hmm.
is this, carry to one, whatever the situation is in
Okay,
terms
but
of
see,
learning the
if you
fundamentals.
okay, but look, let's go back to coffee talks just real quick, and I promise I'm gonna tie it back.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Angel started off with the history. He started off with what? The Indians. Well, way before our time. But then what? He brought it into what it looks like today. So the
Mm-hmm.
problem is not that you taught us fractions when you should have been teaching us how to better be able to do our money. It was you never tied back the fractions into today's time and what we need.
Absolutely. 100%, which is
Mm-hmm.
exactly why your space is integral for learning about those fundamentals in a real world way.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about math. I want to
Yeah.
shift, just
Sure,
because this
sure.
is this is an English language arts curriculum.
Absolutely. Right, right.
No big deal though. I mean, for everybody that that's teaching math, or I have a very close friend at University City who's teaching business. Our podcast episode with Dr. Joelle McIntosh, she's teaching entrepreneurship class. She teaches marketing and
Love it.
all the things that go along with business. So your space could just might put some ideas in their heads. But I want to lean into English language arts real quick, and I want to touch on something else that your space does very indirectly, and you already mentioned it a little bit with the community kind of thing. But when you're learning a language, see, we didn't all we thought about in school was teach me how to write, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, you're learning English is the language,
Mm-hmm.
language and the arts. And anytime you lean into the art, you're already moving beyond any kind of technology, right? Because art isn't really something tangible. When we look at a painting, we see something on the board, but there's something more being communicated, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
something more is what this English language arts curriculum does. It gets into that something more, so not just how do I use writing to communicate, or how do I use imaging to communicate, or video to communicate, or whatever mode of communication that I'm using. That's a part of it, right? And they're already doing that actually very successfully. They know how to text, they know how to use images, they're on social media, they know how to put videos together.
Right.
Like, they're already doing
So
that. So what's the other piece of it,
so
is
here's
what I'm saying.
right. So you just said they're using it. They know how to text. They know how to do this. Okay, but what I didn't hear is, do they know how to communicate their emotions effectively and efficiently?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
English as well.
Absolutely, because it's embodying
Mm-hmm.
the language. So that's a perfect segue into this question I want to ask, which is, what are some examples of the ways environments silently communicate values, priorities, opportunity, exclusion, culture? What are some ways that environments silently communicate those things? Because you talked about how you're silently, you don't have a big poster board that says we're for everybody. How are you silently communicating inclusivity?
Right. It's it's where you market your event. So I mean, us on the Grove. Once I say we on the Grove, then you already get the idea. Oh, okay, this we know what they're saying. We know what they are, what it is.
Well,
And
people that
then
live in St. Louis know what it is.
yeah,
People
people
that
who live in
don't
St.
live in St.
Louis,
Louis, what would you say to them? What would you say to people that don't?
it's a, it's a LGBT friendly strip. Let's just say that. Good food,
Mm-hmm.
good local food in
Mm-hmm.
restaurants. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, and it's in our history museum because they had to fight. So yes, it is a LGBT friendly grove. You'll see the rainbows, the flags, the gay
Mm-hmm.
bars, the lesbian bars, all of that, and then you got people who come in the daytime to eat, and the nighttime
Mm-hmm.
is a whole different vibe. It's to all the clubs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what the
Inclusive
grove is.
clubs. Inclusive
Yes.
clubs. Mm-hmm.
Kind of
Mm-hmm.
inclusive clubs. Remember in the beginning, I said that it's we still holding on to the idea
Mm.
handlebar, but we got new ones coming in that's understanding that, and that is again. Never mind. I'm not even gonna get into that. That's a whole nother tangent. but but anyway. So yes, but it's where you market because let me say
Mm-hmm.
this. Let's say I wanted to do like my aunt. She does stuff for black women,
Mm-hmm.
and she has no shame. She says, "I want to do a Black Woman Summit." Okay, where do you market that? Okay, you put it in HBCUs. Okay, me, I want to be an inclusive space, so I'm not just going to with that we know that we just are marginalized groups where they hang out at. You know what I mean? I'm going. I have to go outside of my own community because
Mm-hmm.
if we're gonna be really truly inclusive, then I have to include outside of my community. So, you know, the ways that I feel that I am silently doing that is the making sure that damn good people are in those community conversations
Mm-hmm.
outside of the building. I show up to the board meetings, you
Mm.
know, I show up to events that's happening around St. Louis. That's again, some of them are in my community, some are outside, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling them who we are, what we do, and saying flat out, I want you in this space because you belong in this space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's kind of loud, but it's not as loud as me putting a sign up on the damn people and say this is an inclusive space because you can say it, but how do you don't want to just say it. You want to ensure that sometimes I have like I think I mentioned it to you. I do. I I don't. I'm not gonna say argue. I'm gonna say advocate even within my own board to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that we are still being inclusive.
Mm-hmm. 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 How does the environment silently communicate that value, though? Silently.
When we say environment, what because environment can be very broad.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what do you mean when you say environment?
Well, I want to know what some examples are of the way that the environment communicates that value that you have of inclusivity.
Hmm.
How does your environment say we can belong here outside of the way people are treated when they walk in the door? What else says inclusive culture?
I think the inclusive. Well, okay. So when you, especially, I can only speak for my space, but when you just walk into my space, you see the community flyers. I let people hang up on the board. That's
Mm-hmm.
various of different people. I mean, there's no common theme to that board. It's
Mm-hmm.
from job to therapy to whatever. I got LGBT friendly therapists that put their stuff on their board. I got
Mm-hmm.
stuff for
Mm-hmm.
black men that they can get in. White women, black women, all
Mm-hmm.
identifying. I have trans resources.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure that it's not just one thing that you see that's just for one community, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this might be sound a little petty, but I'm even intentional about what we play through Pandora. when you walk in.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
That we're
I
playing
love
a
that.
plethora of music, not just
Mhm.
one type of genre and music.
Mhm.
We want to be inviting because a non-person of color might walk in and hear trap or something going on. I'm like, oh, this must be a black space.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't want them to.
Mhm.
You already labeling us. Don't
Mhm.
want to do that. No, they're like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, I hear this, that. They feel comfortable. They feel like it's more inviting.
Mhm.
So those are the little things that you may not notice as you first walk
Mhm.
in, but as you sit and glance and you look at the magazines I have up and you look at, the
Mhm.
resources I have on the community board, because I'll tell you what, not everything stays on the community board. I glance at it to make sure,
Mhm.
okay, I can do this, I can do that. Okay, I'm not for
Mhm.
this. Let's take that back. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I want people to feel included here.
Mhm.
And if I
Mhm.
don't have
Mhm.
it, I ask if I don't have it, what can I do?
Mm.
You know,
Mm. 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 I love that you get the input.
I
That's
need
that's
that.
really
How can we
good.
grow? How can we grow in the community if we don't even hear,
Mhm.
not just hear them, but try and accommodate them?
Mhm. 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 You really can't.
I'm
You
in their
really can't.
neighborhood.
I mean, not if you want to continue to thrive in that space. You really can't. So
Right.
let
No.
me ask you this, for other, if other schools or educators are interested in this community-based approach to learning. So, you mentioned business courses coming in and shadowing workers at Coffee Co. or talking with the business owner of Coffee Co. Maybe, I'm thinking English language arts, they could do some primary research like collecting data about the coffee shop and making determinations, or they could do interviewing of the associates, to collect their own data. If other, it's just some ideas that are popping in my head, but if other schools or educators would be interested in community-based learning, what should they consider when choosing a community partner? Why would they choose you?
You so, and not just even just choosing me. You need um you need a community partner that is diverse. No
Mm-hmm.
if and buts about it. You need a community partner that is diverse and knows their community and is in touch with their community.
Mhm, 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 and
Those are the
willing to
big
be,
ones.
and willing to
Right.
be.
Exact
Mhm.
and willing, yes, and willing to be
I
somebody
would
that's
even
not.
add somebody that's willing to know the truth about the community, because that was one of the things that happened with Angel's presentation and Vivian's presentation about the children of Mill Creek, is that they gave us purview that was the truth.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Whether you wanted to hear it or not.
Mhm.
um,
Yes, that happens.
I and that's why I picked him. I don't want. I knew he was not going to sugarcoat,
Mhm.
and you need someone who is not gonna sugarcoat it. But you also need someone who can also take the constructive criticism too. All
Mhm.
these go into picking a community. Because you have to. I mean, just when we talk about a partnership in that aspect, it's a relationship, and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't come into every relationship I come in with the same core values, but I sometimes shape and adapt.
Mhm.
You have to, and you need someone that can do that. That's not setting they in their ways. They're not setting, they, like I said, they have to be in tune. They have to
I
be in touch.
agree.
You know, it's
I agree. I
important.
think that's what makes a partnership between schools and a community meaningful rather
Hmm.
than performative. To me, performative are like the field trips that we used to go on when we were in school,
Yeah.
and we really had no idea except for just having the experience of going,
Hmm.
what the learning aspect of what was associated, like why was it essential that we go to the arch.
Right. Yeah. But see. The
It
one
has
thing
a
that
lot of learning
it
potential, but
does, it does. But guess what? They didn't tell you the truth. You know what I mean? They didn't. That's when you should have learned a little bit about Mill Creek, or that's when you should have learned, that we were promised contracts and we didn't get
Mm-hmm.
them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and the racism that went into building it.
And the question of whether having such a monument has the meaning that we intend for it. And then they can start actually thinking for their self,
Right, but see
right?
so that's the difference between St. Louis public schools and the schools that I went to in Virginia when I lived in DC, was
Mm,
that they in DC they taught us the curriculum. So let's say,
mm,
for example, we talked about the history of the slaves, and then what did we go do? We went to Jamestown and went on the plantation.
mm-hmm,
And we watched them work. Well, we didn't watch slaves work, but we watched, the little stuff, and so we could put it together.
mm-hmm,
Here it was like, okay, sign this permission slip. We going down to the arch. I'm like, well, okay, that's fun because it gets me out of the classroom. But
mm-hmm,
for why? Why? What's the why?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And then you don't have, and then I think field trips are important, but you don't have the funding to be able to do it. Because certain public schools don't own their buses, and stuff like that. But because I do think, like we're talking about now, of getting out of that traditional classroom. Yes, those would be your field trips, but they do need to remain meaningful.
mm-hmm. And
Mhm.
embedded within the
Yes,
learning experience. How do
yes.
you think the students will change when they begin? What's the potential for students having this experience when they're interacting with real people, real
Hmm.
businesses, real community issues as a part of the learning process?
They're gonna feel like how I felt when I took government my senior year. Finally, something relevant to me. Finally,
Mm-hmm.
something that I could work with.
Mm-hmm.
Where has this been? We should have had this from day one. That's how they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna fit. That's how they're gonna feel. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
get the real idea of, okay, this is how money really works. Okay, so you
Mm-hmm.
know what? I call my mama broke, but maybe she ain't that broke. you know, she would just make it. You get what I mean? We say these
Yeah.
things as kids because we don't understand the survival mode. We don't understand the bills. And then,
Mm-hmm.
especially in black families, you stay in the child place. But when does that child finally move into an adult place where they can learn? I
Mm-hmm.
always said, if I had kids, I'm gonna show you I want you to still be a kid, but I'm gonna slowly introduce you that, here, these are my bills and this is how I manage the check.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because when you
Mm-hmm.
move out, I want you to be able to manage your check.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, that those are the things. If school was wrapped around in that way, in that concept, we would have people would probably go and everybody would probably go get their doctorates almost. You know what I
They
mean?
would see the value. They
They
would
would
see the
see the
value
value.
because, and it's so funny you bring that up because a lot of people I think that, well, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody else, but having a doctorate is about so much more than having a title.
Hmm.
There's an entire experience that I've gone through of breaking my understanding
Hmm.
of things and then building my new understanding so other people can understand what I'm trying to say. Was that too many understands?
Yeah,
But
no.
if you never break your understanding from
Hmm.
something, then you continue to perpetuate those slaves in the field, okay? in a
Yeah.
modern in a modern way. Like I literally know people here in St. Louis that spend all they do on the weekend is sleep from the Monday through Friday that
Hmm.
has taxed their minds
Hmm.
and their bodies and their times so severely that they can do nothing else but sleep. They have no desire. And after 20, 10, 20, 30 years of doing that, that literally becomes their life. So they want to know why you want them to even consider anything else. So when Harriet came back, they didn't want to go. They was like, we ain't going nowhere. We got
What? No.
cornbread on
Like you.
Christmas. Like,
Good. I love you said that. Like, but like Harry. Like Harry also said, I could have freed a bunch more slaves if they knew they were slaves.
Seriously. Seriously.
I had to get out of that rat race. I did. I saw it. I knew it for what it was, and I said, I do not belong here. I am putting my energy in somebody else's dream, and absolutely not. Like we talked about the other day, you know how to be your true self in all type of environments. Me, I was conditioned a different way, you know, and corporate. I didn't like having to hide behind a mask of I want to go off. But I have passive aggressiveness coming at me through an email as per my last email, this and this and that, just the
Yes,
petty
yes,
stuff.
yes, yes,
I don't
yes.
miss that. It feels like a game of Survivor. You gotta. It just no. You can have it. Me, I'm good where I'm at. I like being a 1099. Maybe you can run the company now. Maybe you could change it.
I mean, the pro that's another conversation. That's another
Right? Yeah.
conversation. That's another conversation. Listen, I got one more question. This has been
Okay.
so good. I really appreciate your time. This is my final question. As we think about the future of education, what role do you believe communities should play in helping shape curriculum and learning experiences for young people? What role do you believe communities should play?
If when we to answer your question, we the role that we should play is the role of igniting the free thinking in people
Woo!
to get them to ask questions and question. You're allowed to question. You are. Whether you agree or disagree on whatever's happening, you are still allowed to question, and you can ask that question. But we have to get out of the textbooks. We
Mm,
have to stop relying on one single teacher to stand in front of you and say, this is this and this and that, to teach you, to spoon feed you everything. When are you gonna get out and actually, because by the time you get out of school, ain't nobody continue no education because they're still waiting on the teacher to still educate them in some form or fashion. But when are you gonna take that initiative and say, no, I want to learn a little bit more about this? I can go out and learn about it. I don't have to wait for it. And most of the time that's free for you. And that's the role that we need to play is being able to
I
give
love
them
that.
those tools to be able to know how to do that.
I absolutely love that. I do two exercises with my students. One, we do a round table. Each person has to say what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
That is so difficult for many of them. They're so used to regurgitating the information, which is why the use of AI is an inhibitor for a lot of people because they're trying to control what AI is capable of doing and how it impacts.
Mm-hmm.
But when you ask somebody, what do you believe? You can't get that from AI. You can fake it and say, this is what I believe. And, you know, and I even tell them, I say, you know what? I'm not going to fight you on your own integrity. If you choose to operate in this way, then you
Mm-hmm.
will suffer the consequences of that choice. But when you ask them what do they believe, they cannot answer that. The second thing is when I get the high schoolers in my college classroom, they're still asking me to go to the bathroom. Can I go to the bathroom?
Yes, you have to make that in your beginning speech. We all adults here, or we old enough to go, whatever. Just excuse yourself and quietly exit and come back. After we've trained them, now we get to say, well, guess what? You get a little bit more freedom. You don't have to do that anymore. We're gonna give you just a little bit of freedom.
And that's a great way to close. So what would education look like if freedom happened in kindergarten?
Uh,
and first grade.
I tell you what, the teachers now who were built and educated in the old forum will hate those students coming up because they're gonna question you on everything. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
challenge. They're gonna challenge you on
Mm-hmm.
everything and challenge your way of thinking because you can still be biased in what you teach. They're
Mm-hmm.
gonna challenge.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna challenge that, and that classroom is gonna be way longer than 60 minutes if you got everybody trying to do that.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. If we're not training them for the workplace, then they shouldn't be experiencing workplace culture when they're at school.
I agree.
Thank you, Sidney. Thank
It's been a
you
pleasure.
so much. This was the dopest conversation ever. I really appreciate your time today, your perspective. Damn Good People is an amazing space and it's going to continue to thrive.
Thank
Somebody
you.
is going to let me
Speak it.
teach
Speak it.
there.
Speak it.
Somebody
Speak it.
is going to let me pilot this curriculum at Damn Good People so we can help students to embody the fundamentals.
I'm down for the cause.
All right. Before we close today's episode, I want to share one final voice from the community. Throughout this conversation, we've been thinking about how community spaces can become part of the curriculum. I recently spoke with Kim Lomax, owner of Coffee Co., about what it means to create a space rooted in connection, identity, and belonging. Welcome to Educate Us. I am Dr. Tiffany Smith, and today we are on site at Lots of Love Daycare. We are joined by Kim Lomax, owner of Lots of Love Adult Daycare, plus 2 Coffee Co. locations. And we're just grateful to be on site with you today, Kim. Thank you so much for your time. Is it just these 3 businesses, or did you want to plug any other businesses?
I have 2 adult daycares, and I have a home health care agency. I have CDS and in-home services.
Okay. This whole podcast episode, we've been exploring the role of community spaces and how, the role that they play in learning and belonging. In this episode, we spoke with Sidney McGhee, and he described Coffee Co. as an anchor for the community. And our podcast listeners, as you know, Coffee Co. is Kim's coffee shop that's on site inside the Damn Good People community building. Sidney described the Coffee Co. as a space where people feel like they belong. So when you created Coffee Co., what kind of space were you hoping to build?
I guess I'm going to agree with Sidney, a safe place for everyone to come, and a place that the community can gather at, and also people can learn from it.
And we also talked about the ideas that spaces communicate value and messaging. What do you hope people feel or understand when they walk into Coffee Co.?
It's a place where you can be you. It's a place like the Cheers where
I love
everybody
that.
know your name. A place where, again, you can come, you can feel safe. There's no judgment zone there. You should be getting greeted with great customer service, so you feel welcomed as a customer and as a member to want to come inside that place. So it's giving you the safe feeling that you need to be a person that comes into Damn Good People in Coffee Co.
Okay. Is there anything about the atmosphere or design that you think communicate?
I love the whole indoor-outdoor feel. I think it's a great vibe. The workers are great. The Damn Good People organization are great. I just think it's overall a great space to be. It's very thought out, very well put together. I love it myself, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. So many educators are beginning to think that community spaces are places where learning can happen. If students spent time at Coffee Co., what would you hope they observe or learn from the space and the people who gather there?
It's a Black-owned coffee shop, a Black woman-owned coffee shop, the first Black-owned woman coffee shop in the Grove, and her first location in Jenny's also is the first Black woman-owned coffee shop. So I definitely believe that it's a Black girl magic. All your dreams can come true. It's about what you put into it. The sky's the limit.
The sky is the limit.
The sky's the limit.
Thank you so much, Kim, for taking time to speak with us today real briefly. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.
What Kim has created at Coffee Co. reminds us that the spaces we build communicate something long before a conversation begins. They tell people they are welcome, they are seen, and they can imagine possibilities they may not have ever considered. Thank you for listening to Educate Us. Educate Us is a podcast and learning collective of TMS Visionary Group. All podcast content is protected by copyright. Copyright 2026 TMS Visionary Group, all rights reserved. New episodes are released every Monday. Thank you for joining the conversation.